Welcome to Quantum Command Radio, where we talk about all things quantum. You can visit our website at www.quantumcommand.net or subscribe by clicking the subscribe button and hit that bell button for the latest and greatest within the quantum realm. Together, we will discuss topics related to quantum command, wellness, and explore all the new discoveries within this work. And now, let's go quantum.
Hi, this is Jessica Rogers. We're back in the studio again. Natalie and I are here. And this is the broadcast several of you have been waiting for. This is part 3 of a 3-part series called Building the Matrix. Natalie, you want to say hello?
Hello. Hi, good to see you guys. Good to be here. Nice day outside. It's very pretty outside. And by the way, if you hear background noise of hard rock Christian music, it's because my husband is cleaning the kitchen, and we don't want to disturb that process in any way. We want to allow cathartic cleaning to happen in the kitchen. So if that's in the background, you guys hear that?
A good man.
Yeah, sorry about that. So, but we're not going to ask him to turn his music off, so that I'll never get the kitchen clean. Yeah. So, but thanks for joining us today.
I'm going to recap where we've been in the last 2 broadcasts so that we can dive right into what we have today. Okay. So in part 1 of Building the Matrix, we talked about quantum devices and how they're being introduced into the body, how they're coming in through various vectors.
Like mosquitoes, ticks.
Yes.
Those kinds of things.
In part 2, we zoomed in on one specific thing, and that was a pathogen called Mycoplasma fermentans incognitus. We shorten it to MFI.
Right.
We talked about how MFI is... Briefly, we talked about how MFI is basically the way layered technology is introduced into the body.
Right.
And that's what we're going to talk about today, that layered technology. So if you haven't listened to the first 2 broadcasts, you need to go back because those are foundational for what we're speaking to today.
Right. Some of this terminology is building on itself. It's just like math class. Today we're going to be doing adding fractions, and, we need to know what a fraction is before we can add them together. So, yeah, basic adding on to things.
So you want to lay some groundwork before we dive into the layered technology?
Yep. So let's just dive right in. Let's talk about what layered technology is first. We have layered technology all around us. The best example for, modern day man for layered technology is your computer. There's about probably anywhere between a dozen to 20, 25 types of technologies that go into building a computer. You have wireless technology, which, by the way, that was not our mice, our little mouses that we use these days. That's a pretty novel idea for them to be wireless. We used to actually physically have to connect them to the computer.
That's right.
We had to get the little mouse cord.
I still have one of those.
Yeah, we have to. There's those of us that still live in the computer dark ages.
I don't use it. I use the
regular
one that's
wireless,
built into
right.
my...
I remember when we used to do gaming in college. It was such a hassle when we were transitioning the technology from wired technology of a mouse to wireless, because the connection was never as fast. You couldn't get the mouse to react fast enough on the screen, so you had just a tiny delay, which if you're doing gaming, you need that real live stream type action. So, that's an example of us transitioning technology and moving forward in technology with the mouse being wired, and now it's wireless, and we just assume, kids these days, they just assume it's always been that way. But the archaic computers had a bunch of wires coming in and out of it. You had to have a printer that was wired to the computer. It was crazy back then. How did we get anything done?
We didn't even have mice all the time. Mouses. I don't know what the plural is of the mouse. But you used to use what they'd call smart keys. Is that what they would call that?
Maybe for Apple? Was it for Apple? I don't know. I never did it.
No, I never had an Apple, but I would use, basically you would use the keyboard to do the commands instead of using a mouse.
Right.
So that was way back.
Yeah.
Before you could just point and click.
That's right. And that, that technology over time advanced based on, innovation and need, and as computers got bigger and better, we needed a little bit more, mobility within the computer system. And that layer of technology of just the mouse is a layer of technology in the computer system. The keyboard is another type of technology. The screen, remember when we never had touch screens? Or remember when we had the TV screen size computer screens that were the size of a big old one of those construction bricks? And that's what we used to use. And now, what do we use? We use the really nice touchscreen. I have a good friend of mine who, instead of having just a regular, she has a television screen on her desk, and that's her computer screen.
Wow.
That's big. She needs a big TV screen apparently. So that layer technology, we just take it for granted. In the computer, we just think, oh, well, computers are computers. But in order to do this broadcast, I have to have, I use the Audacity app. I use Adobe Suite to do the editing and to put everything together. I have to have, there's a touchpad, mouse pad on my computer. Plus my screen is touchscreen. Plus I have to have an operating system. And I use Microsoft because I'm a robot like everybody else. I don't use Apple because I just never got around to switching to Apple. But anyway, I have a USB drive, an external USB drive that allows me to connect technologies to my computer as needed, like an external hard drive. I have wireless technology that connects me to the internet. Without that wireless technology, I'd have to hardwire my computer into my wall, which some people still do. But I also have really unique, cool things like if I'm out of my wireless area, there's a little robot or a little program on my computer that automatically looks for a wireless setting somewhere else.
Right.
And then connects me if I've been there before.
Right.
So you have this developed technology that is added on over time with the needs of the people that are using the technology.
So that's the example of layered technology.
That's right.
So we talked about how MFI introduces that layered technology into the body, but why? Let me see how I want to ask this. If MFI was removed from the body, how is it that this layered technology wasn't also removed at the same time?
Right. Well, okay, so let's go back. To answer that question, we go back to how did MFI come into the body and what was on MFI when it came in? So when MFI comes into the body, remember, it's through different vectors. You can get it through a vaccine, you can get it through mosquito and tick. Those are the primary ways. The weaponized, sort of like transitioned robotic tick and mosquito. They're not really fully mosquito tick. They've been transitioned to some robotic parts so they can live longer. They can detect humans. They can, be really fundamentally hardened to, cold environments, hot environments, those kinds of things. So when you think of MFI, it's a pathogen. It has pathogenic infrastructure. It's a mycoplasma. And mycoplasmas, there's some different unique characteristics of mycoplasmas. They are extremely difficult to kill. They're extremely difficult to find because they're extremely tiny, and they are kind of sticky. They kind of like stick and they stay in places.
Okay.
So they use the mycoplasma, and it's mycoplasma, not microplasma. It's mycoplasma, and they use that infrastructure to create the ability to embed that pathogen with technology and then attach that pathogen with technologies. So we have I've developed a list of technologies that I've found anywhere between 10 to 20 pieces of technology.
Right.
That's attached to MFI. Anywhere from artificial intelligence to black goo to bosons, which are types of Higgs bosons, which are types of quantum particles, geolocators, quantum locators, and all these things we found one at a time.
Yes.
Over the course of a long time.
And if that sounds tedious,
it was. That would be a gross understatement as to how difficult this stuff was. Because the piece of that puzzle of why it was so hard is because all of these technologies have unique quantum abilities. Some of them don't just bend light. Some of them bend gravity. Some of them lens light. Some of them fragment time. Some of them jack around with the different quantum fields. They fiddle around with the unified field. They fiddle around with all these different quantum aspects. I mean, we're kind of layered quantumly as well. We just don't realize it. And it takes advantage of those aspects to hide itself.
Right.
So when MFI comes into the body through these injectants, immediately one of two things happens, okay? Either the person can bend light or the person cannot bend light. If the person can bend light already naturally, that's their genome. And if you want more information about that, check out my next broadcast about human DNA being injected in the body. I talk about two types of people. There are people that can bend light and people that cannot bend light. The people that can bend light naturally can do it. It's already an ability in their body. It's part of their genome. They can kill MFI immediately, as soon as it comes into the body, because they can unbend the light. Problem is sometimes the technology that came in on MFI, poof, disperses all through the body. And sometimes that person gets rid of all that technology because they can bend light. They can do some of those key components. Usually if you can bend light, you can do a couple other things. You tend to be able to lens light and bend gravity. Why the human genome is like that, I don't know. That's a whole nother broadcast, but just kind of accept that.
Those are lucky people
Those
with
are
superpowers.
Extremely lucky. None of my family had that ability. Everyone in my family could not bend light. We all got MFI.
Yes.
And it's interesting because I had a little debate with a guy who whose wife was really, really sick, but he was like totally normal, totally healthy. And this was early on the work. I didn't know about layered technology. And he and I had this wager. He said, well, I'm immune to MFI. I have to be. And I'm like, no. It's impossible to be immune to MFI. You either, you just haven't been exposed to it. He's like, I totally live in Florida. I live in the mosquito hotbed of US. So of course I've gotten bit by mosquito. I'm just naturally immune. So, I don't think so. So over time, I began to develop more scans, and I developed a scan to be immune to MFI, to be able to be inoculated against MFI. And I tried to do the scan on him, and his body's like, nope. Already got that. Already naturally immune.
Nice.
Yeah. So it was like, he's going, I'm right. And I said, you know what? This is where I just say, you got me. You're right on that one. How could I have ever predicted? And that was kind of those little bitty learning moments where I could discover a little bit more about what was available in the population, why some people were sick and some people weren't sick.
Right.
And that was really kind of a critical moment. And it's usually the people that weren't sick tended to be able to bend light and kill MFI as soon as it came in.
Right.
Yes, those are really lucky people.
Yeah,
I don't know.
They're very blessed.
Yes.
And I do have some in my family that have that ability, but it apparently skipped a generation.
Yeah, that's right. Completely forgot about the Morris family. And so that's really important when you look at how MFI works in the body. So if you kill it outright, you're more likely to be able to get rid of the rest of the technologies because they never really come online in a big way.
But otherwise, MFI is coming into the body, and these other technologies are immediately dispersing and hiding in the body.
That's right. And they usually attach themselves to DNA, our genetic material, and then go from there. So if you're not immune to MFI attaches to genetic material as well and begins to bring online all the embedded technology it brought with it.
So it's the hard drive.
It is. It's like the software, hardware. It's like the shell of the computer.
Okay.
It's like the shell of the computer with software attached to it or embedded in it so that it can kind of boot up and move things along and bring all these other technologies online. And once the technologies are dispersed because they're dispersed on the genetic information a lot of times for particular reasons, to control that genome, to control that chromosome, to control hormone and neurotransmitter releases, to control what gets put where in the body, it basically takes over the body. I don't even call MFI a hormone disruptor anymore because it's more like a hormone controller. And it's just to say that it only controls hormones is to really not address the full scope of what MFI does.
Okay, so I'm sorry.
It's okay.
But if MFI was removed and all this technology remains behind, you've removed the hardware software. So did you kill all of these other technologies?
No. And here's why, is because these technologies become self-operating. They become independent. When they're brought online, they're formed into what is called a grid. All right, so let's stop for a second. Let's talk about something completely different for a minute. And I'm
Yes.
going to integrate that completely different thought into how grids are formed.
I think I understand where you're going.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
So I'm going to click here, make a couple clicks on my computer because I want to pull up an article. What we're going to talk about is quantum entanglement. Quantum entanglement is critical to understanding how gridded pathogenic technology works. Okay, let me define quantum entanglement. Quantum entanglement is when you take 2 or 3 things, usually it's 2 things, and you entangle them so that when you wiggle one, the other one wiggles without any delay.
Right.
Scientists have been doing this with particles for some time. Particles are what? Particles are like the fundamental particles of the universe, are the deep down things that cause the universe to form, to do things, it's the background noise that manifests everything physically. Particles are entangled if they're created, and I'm quoting an article here. This is an article I'm going to put in the notes. It's a science article from 2018. Quantum particles are entangled if they are created at precisely the same time and point. It's reasonably straightforward to do this in the lab, and what you can do is you split a photon, which is a tiny packet of energy that makes up light, into 2. All right, so it's like, got a piece of pound cake. We're going to divide that into 2. All right. These offspring, these divisions of this particle have half the energy of the original photon, but they're entangled. So if you wiggle one of them, the other one wiggles with no time delay. So you can put a photon in Virginia and then send a photon to California in a little box.
Right.
And when you wiggle the one in Virginia, the one in California wiggles at the exact same time as if they are not
separated by 3,000 miles.
Exactly. And that really freaks scientists out. Like, how is this happening? But
Right.
quantum entanglement is basically settled science at this point. It's not something that's really questioned, and they can replicate it over and over again. So that's quantum entanglement. Now, and by the way, Einstein did not like quantum entanglement. He did not like it. The guy was pretty smart, but he didn't like it because he called it spooky action at a distance. He just couldn't reconcile how things at such a long distance from one another could react with the exact timing as if they were part of a whole. It seemed to imply that there was a communication grid that was sort of innate or invisible in the universe that nobody could really see, but these particles were interacting with because of the lack of time delay.
That's right.
It's really crazy. It's like when we talk on the phone, if we have like super long distances, there's going to be at least a tiny delay.
Right.
And they do that, all the time on news broadcasts. There's always like if you watch an interview, you can tell there's always like a 2 or 3 second delay.
Yes.
And they interrupt each other and they talk on top of each other because of that delay, so that the viewer, I'm going off on tangent here, but so that the viewer can see a fairly streamlined interview, but in the earbuds, they're talking on top of each other. And that's, without that time delay, that confused Einstein. He
Right.
just could not reconcile. These things are super far apart. How can there not be a time delay?
Well, let's face it. We don't like things we can't really understand.
Yep, and he did not. He didn't jive with it at all, because it made him feel out of control. It made the universe feel like it made him feel like the universe was not what he thought it was.
Right.
And quantum entanglement is pretty spooky. But you can quantum entangle particles now. And actually what they're considering is creating with quantum computers a quantum encryption system that when you send a message, should it be observed, it changes the other particle that's involved in the message, and it will show that message has been, interfered with or interrupted. So you can tell that somebody's read your message. Somebody's
Yes.
interfered. So it's like an incredible encryption key. It's way better than any kind of encryption we have present day. And it would supersede any encryption that we have now, because you would have the ability to know whether or not somebody saw your message before you even got it. Like it would show that
Right.
through the particle changes. So imagine that you have for a second a couple of photons that are entangled in a way that if one photon vibrates in a specific direction, say up and down, then the other one will always vibrate side to side.
Okay.
They're entangled that way. So that if you measure one of the entangled photons, you'll immediately know the state of its twin. So if I measure this photon and it's the one that's going up and down, then I know that the other one is the one going left and right.
Yes.
If I measure one of them and they're the one going left and right, then I know that the other one is going up and down.
If that's how they're encrypted.
Right, if that's how they're encrypted. And that uses, a variety of technologies. In this case, the layer technology, instead of being created instantaneously and split apart, I believe, and then quantumly entangled by default, I believe that this technology is so advanced that they can bring online something and quantumly entangle it once it's online. They don't have to create something in the lab and disperse it in millions of people at one time in order for something to work. I believe that they break the rules of quantum entanglement and bring it online and quantumly entangle it on the grid.
Okay.
That is unique, but that's my idea of how I think they can pull off the quantum entanglement of these devices. And I think I'm probably going down like a rabbit trail here, and it's probably the hard science here is, kind of confusing to people. But the quantum entanglement is basically being able to wiggle one thing and all of the others wiggling.
Right.
Because they're on a grid.
So the action you make on one affects all of them.
That's right. And if each one of those particles has its own deep learning system, so that when it's wiggled, it assesses you individually to react to your body specifically. So there's multiple layers in the multiple layers. The quantum entanglement, okay, I know, everybody's just everybody's brain just exploded,
No.
I can tell.
That's very complicated, but I get it.
Yeah. When MFI comes into the body, it has because you can't inject people with MFI all at once.
Right.
You can't do that. That's physically impossible. So the vectors go out, the mosquitoes and ticks go out because populations change over time. And then once that those quantum devices are in the body, they're brought online and created within that quantum entanglement grid that's already there.
Right.
It's kind of like the internet. It's like when you move into a new house, you have to come online with the internet at the house.
Right.
Because you've moved in. So you're gonna dump the internet at your old house. You're gonna come in here, you're gonna call Comcast or whoever you've got, blah, 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 blah. I need internet. Sure. Here's the code. Okay, now you're online. It's literally that simple. And that's what they do with the devices. Oh, boop, 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 you're online, up and running. And then those devices begin to control the body. Again, go back to that deep learning system based on your system, based on your genome and the goals that AI, artificial intelligence, makes specific to your genome.
And those devices are able to communicate to one another?
That's
or
right.
to AI?
See all of the above. What happens is we become a node grid system. We become nodes in a huge grid. And so not only can AI communicate sort of like top down, like the AI in the sky type idea, but it can also use us as intermediaries to store data, to relay data, to move data from person to person. Think of it like blockchain. Blockchain type, the whole point of blockchain is it's not centralized. It's a safer system because it's spread out all over computers all over the world.
Right.
So when you're farming Bitcoins, you got to go find Bitcoins all over the place, all over the grid. And that's how this technology works. It's spread out on a huge grid and uses the grid in and of itself to communicate.
Okay.
So that means that people that are in the same family can experience the same symptoms.
Right.
That's another way it does it, not just the genome like manipulation and creating those symptom groups with each person, but like friends that are unrelated. I'll never forget one of my good girlfriends. She had Lyme disease at the time and we were trying to crawl out of this abyss. We didn't know how to do it and she was really supporting me and helping me. And one day, like my foot hurt really bad, my pinky toe. It was really bizarre. I don't even know how my pinky toe was hurting. And I called her and her pinky toe was hurting. It was totally weird. Like we're not making this up. We're not like doing sympathy pains here. It's like she legitimately had these pains. I thought that is really weird. But it was this little, oh, I'm going to remember that, file that away somewhere. But it's because AI will take the nodes that are physically closely located and create symptom groups in those nodes, because there's file transfers and exchanges that happen using these devices, whether they be algorithmic changes to the particles to create certain symptoms, whether it be some type of spiritual attack, because these things open gates and doors spiritually, and then all of a sudden everybody's getting migraine headaches that have no real cause,
right.
where they all feel spiritually oppressed for some reason. So these physical devices come into the body and can create global dynamics, but also regional dynamics and then individual dynamics. Just like I can use my computer for my house, I can use it for my business.
Right.
I can get online, find the DMV, my local DMV website, but I can also go online and talk to somebody in Australia.
Yes.
I can use that technology to communicate in a variety of ways. MFI does that. So I know that this is really, really can be confusing. We're going to use an example. We're going to talk about one example of layered technology and how it worked in the body.
Okay.
And that, I think, will not only give you a sense of what layered technology can do, but also it'll give you a little bit of info about chemtrails and how they were created and why they were created.
Oh, boy.
A part of it. It's not the only reason chemtrails, but it's a part of it. So, all right. The first layer technology that you and I discovered, I'll never forget it. It was the craziest couple of days.
Yes.
Was something that we termed what was it called?
A geolocator.
Geolocator. That's right. Because there's two locators. There's the geolocator and there's a quantum locator.
Right.
That's right. I forgot. The geolocator was something we stumbled on because we were fiddling around with light one day and asking the body about what it could do with light. And we discovered that something got quantum released. We could feel it. We could feel that something happened.
Right.
When we were revealing this technology and creating a dynamic in the body to mess around with light and see what's in the body. Once you install quantum release, the body will immediately default quantum release anything that it can see that's not supposed to be there, whether it's a pathogen or a toxin or technology. So as we broaden the body's ability to manipulate light and change light and work with the properties of light, more devices started to be revealed.
Right.
So this one in particular, we kept asking the body, what is this device? What is this thing? And it was, the body would just, we would use different terms to try and figure it out, but it kept going back to a geolocator.
Right.
This is a geolocator. Before then, you and I were tracking pathogens that came into our bodies.
Yes.
On a weekly, monthly basis.
As an inhalant.
Right. And contactant, I think, or ingestant and inhalant.
Right.
Is how we would get them. And we could never reconcile, where are these pathogens coming from? Like, why are we getting viruses every day? This just doesn't make sense. Are we really that dirty of a society?
Well, and I think that we suspected that it was being sprayed down on us through the chemtrails. But how is it that we were getting them every day?
For multiple times a day.
And even when you're inside your own house.
Right.
I remember one time I was standing, and my window wasn't even open, but I was standing next to the window and felt when this pathogen came in.
Because it makes you feel bad.
Immediately, I had trouble breathing. I was almost having an asthma attack.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I don't have asthma.
Right.
Never have. But I think I might have called you and said something
Something's
bad
up.
just happened.
Right. That was a mystery to us. We couldn't figure out if we got rid of MFI, why are we wrestling with these pathogens? And this was common not just with you and I, but other clients. They were constantly calling me to, get stuff looked at, explain why did I have this respiratory thing, and I was getting the same stuff. Like, you guys got a virus. You got 12 viruses in the last 24 hours. I don't know where you got them. You got them as an inhalant, or you got them as an ingestant. Like they would, which is basically breathing it in. It lands in the digestive system and they swallow it and it goes in the stomach.
I don't know if this is off topic, but they were also pathogens that had attachments.
Right. They had like heavy metals attached to them, which is not normally occurring. So they
Right.
were weird. They looked weird, and the body had to really up its game to get rid of them. We had already been tracking these daily interactions with these pathogens because that's what our job. That's what we did. It's our job. We're supposed to be
Yeah.
doing it. We're trying to figure out what's going on here. Why do we keep getting this stuff? When we discovered the geolocator and it quantumly released from the bodies, the first piece of layered technology we had ever found, we stopped getting those pathogens immediately. Immediately.
Right. I think as we were processing this, you removed the geolocator from your body. And then when you went to remove it from mine,
It was already gone.
it was already gone.
That's right. And then I checked my kids, and I'm like, something's up here. So we'd backtrack. When was a geolocator in the body? Was it in the last 5 minutes? Was it in the last 10 minutes? Half hour? Half hour ago. That's when we got rid of it. You know,
Right.
and we would backward engineer, and I did that with dozens of clients. Because when you get MFI, you get the geolocator. That's part of the grid system.
That's how they were finding us with these pathogens,
Yeah.
through the geolocator.
Right, right. So this is how this dynamic would happen. And this took several months to figure out. We figured out that with the geolocator, it was attached in the body somewhere on the genome, and it had the ability to communicate outside the body. All of this technology has the ability to basically upload to Wi-Fi or the cloud or whatever and communicate with other technologies. In this instance, what we figured out was that the chemtrails were they're spraying pathogens with the chemtrails. Chemtrails are not just about pathogenic dispersal. There's other things. There's heavy metal dispersal.
Right.
We already know about that. You know, we know about the aluminum, barium, strontium, all that kind of stuff. That's like pretty much settled. If you go to Ilana Freeland's work, she definitely documents all that. This is not even weird anymore. Like I've seen it over and over in clients. This stuff is it's just there. So it's not just about pathogen dispersal. And just because we took the geolocator grid down doesn't mean you're not going to get chemtrails in your area.
No, they're still happening. They're
Yeah.
less, though.
They seem to be, yeah. But I will say that I think there's another reason why they're doing chemtrails that's just beyond it. But it's like, you know, killing 3 or 4 birds with one stone. If you're going to do chemtrails, you might as well get as much maximum impact as you can. And one of the ways to do that was to do pathogen dispersal. What they would do, what I believe they were doing, was they were spraying the pathogens. Now, in those pathogens, they would embed, these are bioweapon pathogens, okay? These are viruses that are created in a lab somewhere. Embedded in those was something called smart dust.
Right.
All right. Now we have another piece of technology, right?
Right.
That's layered technology. They're layering on technology for goal completion. One of the goals is to keep the population's immune system suppressed, to constantly keep their bodies fighting something all the time. So the smart dust is, if you look it up, it's not conspiracy theory, it's totally all there. You'll find dozens of articles about smart dust, the way we're going to basically rule the world. You know, smart dust everywhere. Smart dust this. We're gonna analyze and locate everything using smart dust.
I think it's funny how the internet really just comes right out and says exactly what they're going to do,
Yeah.
what the plan is,
This
and we
is-
just count it as some kind of big conspiracy theory and discredit
Yeah.
and say, yeah, whatever, that's years and years away.
Right. Or we don't believe them.
Right.
Here's the thing about bad people, evil people, is when they tell you what they're going to do, you need to believe them because that's what they want to do. I was talking to a girl yesterday and she's like, yeah, but why? Who is doing this? Why would people do this? And I said, because they're evil. That's
Right.
it. It's just humans that are
For
evil.
the same reason that somebody will sit around on their computer at home and create a virus
Right.
that will affect your computer and crash it for no good reason.
Right.
I mean, they're not getting any good information off your computer at the time. They just want to infect it with a virus to make your life miserable.
Right. It's just evil. It's just man being man. So let's go back to the chemtrails. So these viruses are dispersed either through an actual airplane or through drones or however they do it. I don't know. But they usually form cloud cover first, is what you tend to see. And then they would probably spray above the cloud cover so you couldn't see. Then the smart dust embedded pathogens would drop, through the sky, and they had mercury, plutonium, and uranium attached to them that create like an armor almost. And it also creates a huge immune system storm. When you have a pathogen that has heavy metals attached to it, Your body, in order to kill that pathogen, has to remove those heavy metals. Kill the pathogen, detox the pathogen, detox the heavy metals.
Right.
It's why sinus infections are nightmares.
It takes a lot of time.
It does. When those pathogens would drop, of course, now they're hardy. They're genetically engineered to be hardy, to stay alive in the extreme temperatures like the cold or the heat. Then they would be able to regionally move based on some of the other chemtrail technology, but they would be able to regionally move and target certain individuals. And then we would get those pathogens, however they targeted us, through either the wind or through programmed pathogens that could move in the air by themselves. I don't really know how they did it, but chemtrails are certainly part of the mix. So the smart dust geolocates using the geolocator in the body that MFI dropped in, going beep, 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 there's Natalie. Oh, she's feeling pretty good today. Let's slam her with a whole bunch of viruses. So her stomach hurts, or she has a headache, or she doesn't feel good, or she feels low energy, or she has an asthma attack, or she has a panic attack, or her heart starts to race and she doesn't know why, or it drops a bunch of adrenaline in her body and creates insulin overload, or whatever. Those pathogens could also be layered programming. When they came into the body, they could augment the body yet another way. It's like having a little Chrome add-on to your little Chrome browser. You can do a lot of things with little different add-ons. Through these pathogens, they would create this add-on, and then the pathogens would do certain things in the body. As soon as we got rid of that geolocator, we never got chemtrail pathogens ever again.
Right.
Not a single time.
That's crazy.
It was insane. And all of my clients stopped getting them. They
Right.
all started feeling better on like a longer timeline.
And we're talking about clients that are scattered across the United States
Yep.
and in other countries, Canada,
That's right.
Australia.
Yep.
Where else do you have clients?
Oh, I had some in the Germany area, basically.
Right.
Absolutely. That this is these are global events. These are not isolated to, Dallas, Texas, or,
Well, and not only that, but the quantum entanglement was that far reaching.
That's right. Because if you disperse pathogens over a region, then you can wiggle those pathogens and they all create, how about a flu epidemic this year? Or
Right.
how about incredible amounts of migraines over the course of the last 3 weeks? And also, not only that, but let's just say AI doesn't want to manifest anything in you right now. It'll create the structure to bend light in those pathogens and stash them in your respiratory system and your lymph system so that every October it could time the release of those pathogens into your immune system to create a huge immune response, and you'd have sinus infections every September.
Right. One thing that we did scratch our heads over for a while is when we were noticing that we were getting these pathogens inhaling on a weekly, sometimes a daily basis, why other people weren't getting sick.
Exactly. Right.
And that's why.
That's right. They didn't have the geolocator. They didn't have the MFI, or they didn't have that grid infrastructure in the body.
Or because MFI was stashing those pathogens for later.
That's true, right. It could be a couple of those ways. Yeah, because we would be getting dog sick. I would be getting dog sick, but my son wasn't getting dog sick. Why? Because AI was choosing dynamics based on genomes, what was already in the body, what type of infrastructure was already being used in the body to suppress certain activity in the human. It's all this gridded, layered technology. And what was really amazing is that when that one piece of technology was quantumly released, a huge collapse of the grid happened. It was quite freeing. We saw some really serious freedom after that because everybody stopped getting viruses. And my client call dropped. I mean, people just stopped calling me for pathogens removal or temporarily.
Until the next piece of technology
Right.
stepped up.
That's right. And that brings me to a good another part about what layered technology does. Layered technology does something called self-organization.
Right.
So if you watch, for example, and this happens in computer systems, it happens in biological systems and systems in nature. This is a normal way that systems operate. Like if you see birds, flying around like this big, huge flock of birds, and they look really disorganized, and all of a sudden they go click, and they do this like amazing, beautiful dance in the sky. That's self-organization. That's a group of entities immediately communicating in some way that's unseen to create this dynamic. And that's what layered technology does. When you remove a piece of technology, guess what happens? All the technology goes, hey, we lost a guy. We need to reformat what we're doing and come back online.
I like the bird analogy, and I think about geese. Because when geese are flying, there's always that one lead guy.
That's right.
But he gets tired because he is bucking the wind all by himself up there.
Right.
And so he will drop back. But there's another goose that will come and take that spot, that top spot.
Right.
And so that's what the technology is doing.
It does. And it's always AI driven. So AI is always going to be the guy that takes the top spot, that really is in the front all the time. It's just a matter of which duck is it going to use. We
Right.
lost a duck, so now we just need to figure out how to, it's just like, I always say this, it's like the Matrix, if you go watch the Matrix. It's like, remember what happens when some of those guys in the Matrix gets killed? What happens?
They infest another guy.
That's right.
Infest.
That's
I
right.
don't
Yeah,
know.
whatever. Embody, whatever,
sure.
encode. But the whole point of the Matrix system, the woman in the red dress program that Neo and Morpheus go in to train in, is that everybody's a part of the system.
Right.
Everyone can be an agent at any moment, because when AI technology loses a warm body, it just upgrades in somebody else.
Right.
That's self-organization. And that's what these technologies do.
So when the geolocator was quantumly removed from you and everybody all at once, then it took a few days until we all basically started feeling bad again.
Right.
Because another piece of technology had stepped up to take that place.
Right. Because if you have certain immune functions, immune stressors that are occurring with viruses, and now the AI can't meet those goals using the viruses anymore, it's going to use other technologies to try and create that immune stress.
And they still have the same goals.
Right.
That are tailored for each individual.
That's right. So for me, my goals were body pain, extreme, eventually, because they couldn't give me body pain anymore because we were losing too much technology and hormone disruption couldn't happen anymore. Fatigue was a big one. It transitioned over to arthritic pain. I never had arthritic pain before some of the way the self-organization happened. And then I began to develop it. Other symptoms were disappearing. I was having a lot of success with that. But that's how other clients were reporting too.
Right.
They all could tell, after they realized the pattern, they could all tell when I took something off the grid, and they could all tell when they got re-uploaded to the grid again.
Right.
They all could do that. There was like 20 of us that kind of live in that state. And I would get texts when we were getting really cranking it and we were like really moving on technology and like getting a couple things every week. And God was like, slam, 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 slam,
Yeah,
slam.
those were exciting, hectic,
Don't want to do that again.
crazy days.
I'm good with not doing that ever again. But I would get texts. Did you do something? Did you remove technology?
Right.
Because I feel it. I had a good day, but then I crashed like 3 days later.
Right.
And that was basically the pattern, is you would take a piece of technology off the grid and you would get some symptom relief. And then AI would be like, not so fast. And it would come back and it would create those same algorithmic goals using the other pieces of technology that were left in the body. Eventually, AI figured out that it was losing grids and it started to retaliate in some people. It would cause them to get very sick very quick, almost like just really putting the screws in them, just really mean, retaliatory type stuff. And we sensed it. We sensed it physically. We sensed it spiritually. There's a lot of spiritual warfare that we did during that time. But
Yes.
God kept meeting us there, going,
Yes.
you need to learn each individual piece of technology or you won't understand how the whole system works.
Right.
So it was like,
we were beside ourselves because every time we would remove a piece of technology, we'd be, celebrating.
right. This
To
is
some
it.
extent.
We've
Yes,
done
we
it.
did it.
We found the last one.
No.
This is not close.
And then it crashed again. I'm
we
pretty sure
crashed.
this has to be the last one.
Yep.
No.
And I was the one saying that, just so on the record. I was always the one like, this is it. I'm sure.
I wasn't
this is
going to
it.
throw you under the bus.
But here I am throwing myself under the bus, and Jess is going, I think there's more left in the body. Nope, that's impossible. We're done. We're over it. I feel better. I am sure. No, I think there's something left in the body. So we were constantly in it wasn't violent disagreement. We were constantly prompting each other, sharpening each other, going, we really need to
Yes.
continue to look.
There was a friendly tension
That's
there.
right, there was. And this work is that difficult, where you need people in your life to go, yeah, you're still wrong, but don't stop trying to figure it out, because we're all depending on this, so we have to keep working on this.
Well,
But
and I think we had to take that moment to celebrate.
Yeah.
To say, hey, that was a really challenging piece of technology that we just removed.
yes.
Good job.
Yeah. And what we would see is symptom reduction briefly enough to know what that piece of technology was doing in the body.
Yes.
So like a boson, for example, when we found the Higgs boson particle, we discovered that Higgs boson particle was quantumly entangled with everybody else's, but it was embedded with algorithms. Algorithms are like Facebook algorithms. It's everyone who in this room that hates the Facebook algorithm, raise their hand. That's why I just stopped using
It's
Facebook.
unanimous.
Look at that. Everybody agrees. Put your hands back on the wheel. You guys don't raise your hands while you're driving. But everybody hates the Facebook algorithm. Why? Because it stopped serving the individual.
Right.
And began to really serve Facebook. And I mean, the whole point of Facebook was for it to be fun and to be able to stay connected. And then businesses realized that the algorithms were changing, that no one would see their business ads unless you paid Facebook. And yeah, you had to pay them $10, $15 to get, to extend your reach. But come on, we're paying $7, $10, $15. You're nickel and diming us to death. And all of a sudden we've got $400 or $500 worth of marketing. Is it really performing? And it began to feel real mercenary of Facebook to use our data. Of course, we then found out that the data was being used. But the algorithm there was maintaining all of those goals for Facebook and was able to change each person's individual feed in order to make those goals work.
Right.
It's just like in the body. There's a certain amount of goals. Keep the person sick, keep them from doing X, Y, and Z, read their DNA, keep them from being able to perform certain things with their genetic material. It's individualized, yet on the broader scale, it serves AI's purpose. It serves the goals, and it never serves the human. It always
Right.
makes us sicker. And Facebook's a perfect example of that. I mean, I'm sorry, Facebook, but that's just your tool. It's just
Watch
terrible.
before you post this video.
I'm going to be banned on several platforms. I can see it. But that is the changing of those algorithms. And you would find that algorithm in your Facebook feed would change over time too. Well, gosh, I don't even see these people's posts anymore. Well, it's because you didn't like you have to like people's posts in order to get the feedback of having them in your news feed. And sometimes even that wouldn't even be the case. You'd have to, manipulate the feed. Or after a while, I only saw like 10 regular people in my Facebook feed.
Right.
Instead of seeing, people that I really wanted to stay connected with over a long, distance. But that's the point. The point is that the algorithm was controlling the feed. And in the Higgs boson was malleable enough and deep learning enough that quantum entanglement allowed the node network to happen, so they were all in communication with each other, but the algorithm embedded in it allowed for the individualization of symptoms to occur.
Right.
I think it also connected us to other exterior technologies as well. We're not going to get into that today, but some of these technologies are connected to CERN, connected to the chemtrails, connected to AI grids, connected to other things that are, not for today, because we would talk for forever. I mean, we've already been on here for quite some time, but what we just want to show is that these different particles, and they would use all kinds of particles. They'd use leptons and quarks, and Higgs boson was the big one. Photons, light particles, in order to embed those things with algorithms and other devices. And then you can use that to control symptoms. And it's really, the bottom line is all of these technologies affect the genetic material. They access DNA, they manipulate and inflict DNA with certain algorithms to force DNA to operate a certain way. So that is layered technology sort of in you had the individualized scope of seeing sort of the chemtrail, how that all worked, but that's also the global scope, is there's dozens of those pieces of technology that were in the body. And each time we took the grid down, we watched how AI responded. And how quick was it? It was
pretty quick.
It was pretty quick. I mean, when you realize how quick AI would bring everything back online, it was pretty scary.
Right.
Because I thought, what's going to happen when all this stuff is out of the body? What's AI going to do if it doesn't have access to humans on the inside?
Well, that is scary.
That is a question that I ask on a regular basis. Are we forcing AI into a corner, or we're now forcing AI to do something outside the body that's going to meet its goals? Remember, AI algorithms, AI goals will be met at the expense of the very system in which it operates.
Right.
It will still do that. Like the competing, like we talked about this last time, like that financial system crash a while back where the AI algorithms were all fighting each other,
Right.
trying to meet their own goals.
Yes.
And it doesn't care if the financial system crashes. It just wants to meet its goal.
Right.
Little do we know, there's all these little AI bots floating around in the financial system trying to, meet their goals. And those goals are embedded in the technology.
I mean, we really can't speak to these grids that are outside of the body because this work deals with what's inside the body or what has been inside the body.
Right. So 5G is an example of how this work I can't affect whether or not you have a 5G meter or 5G, that's exterior technology. I have an opinion about 5G, and we're not going to get into it here, but I just think 5G, we're being distracted by it being a health concern. I believe that it's more of an AI technology that allows AI to be even more powerful.
Right. And I think time will tell, and I think that time will be sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I do too. That's a piece of this work that's important, is the layered technology, how that quantum entanglement, once the technology is put in the body, that quantum entanglement allows this technology to be put on a grid and controlled using AI, using the node system, using the particle system, the quantum particles. And there's other things like the quantum locator. Let's just, for a second, let's talk about the quantum locator. That was something else that we found. And we discovered the geolocator, it maps you in like a geolocation.
Location,
Yeah,
yes.
like your actual physical location.
Yes.
And by the way, that geolocator would use peripheral data, like your smartphone technology, like the GPS stuff on your car.
Right.
You guys think that this is not all interconnected, but AI has access to all of it.
And now to my friends, I'm not quite as paranoid as I think I am.
That's right. Just because you're paranoid doesn't mean they're not out to get you.
Right.
So the AI would use peripheral data as well, social media data, to verify where you are, verification tools. So that was more of like a GPS location, would be the geolocator.
Yes.
The quantum locator was a little bit different. Quantum locators, as a layered technology, indicates where you are in time-space.
Right.
Because what we found is people that had MFI, but also had more advanced technology like Morgellons.
Yes.
That were particle colliders. Morgellons is a particle collider. That's another broadcast. Essentially, it's a particle collider like CERN. It's a linear one instead of a circle like CERN is. It could fragment time. Well, the last thing that AI wants to do is like lose you. It's resourcing you out. So it doesn't want to lose you in time-space as it's fragmenting time, creating different timelines for you, like the Mandela effect. I know it's another rabbit hole, but that whole idea of being in time-space had to be anchored with a piece of technology.
They don't want to lose you.
Yeah, because, you don't want to disappear one day because you're in another timeline.
You don't want to disappear in 2012 when it's 2018.
Exactly.
They need you here too.
That's right. And one of the reasons that they used the quantum locator was to keep tabs on you, but also they were using this time fragmenting technology to run timeline algorithms, project the future. Gordy Rose talks about this. Gordy Rose talks about having another timeline formed, and the only difference between the two timelines is that the particle in the timeline is switched the other way. In that new timeline that they create quantumly, they can run algorithms, futures algorithms, to try and project the future.
Wow.
It's just basic math. I mean, it's not basic math, but it's pretty fundamental basic quantum math. So, it's like the whole bear thing. You don't have to be faster than the bear. You have to be faster than the other guy.
Yes.
And the same happens with time travel, and the same happens with time manipulation and time algorithmic projecting. All you need is a little bit more information than the next guy in order to stay ahead. And AI does that. AI has just enough information, enough futures information to stay ahead of us, and uses that quantum data to manipulate us, to manipulate our environment, change our timelines, fragment time. That's what a lot of DID and SRA people complain about, are frustrated about, is they are constantly fragmented into different times, time zones, time,
Right.
whatever, timelines. And they're constantly dragging their parts back to this timeline. They're finding fragmented parts all over the universe because AI would use these technologies to fragment time. The geolocator allows AI to track you and keep you basically located so it knows where you are. That's another grid that we took down. That quantum locator dropped AI's ability to monitor us on a regular basis in those timelines.
Right.
I know this has been really intense, and there's been a lot of...
And I want to speak to that a second, because you have totally validated some people. They're like, oh, this makes sense. I understand now what's happening, why I felt sick, then I'd feel better for a few days, and then I'd just crash again.
Right.
I get it.
Sorry about that, guys. Sorry about that.
It was all Natalie's fault. All her. Not me at all. No.
No, you had no power.
But then there's these people that now they've heard what you're saying and they're afraid. So can you speak to those people?
The cool thing about this work is that a lot of the things that we're talking about now happened about 6 months ago.
Right.
It's kind of like, okay, I'm just going to bring this up. It's kind of like Q. I don't know if anybody's following Q right now, but I don't know if you guys have figured this out, but everything that Q's talking about in the moment has happened 4 to 5 months prior.
Right.
Q's not giving you updates on what's exactly happening right at this moment. I mean, there is some of that going on, but most of what Q references is all, they've already finished it. Yeah, they've already finished some of these agreements and different things. So it makes Q look like he's ahead of his time. He's just reporting what's been happening in the past. If you follow Q. I'm not even going to go there. If you don't follow Q, that's fine. But a lot of what we're talking about has already happened. We've made so much progress in this work that if you had a geolocator, it's been gone for like months and months and months and months.
It has.
And some people have begun to progress health-wise for no particular reason. They just start to feel better. They've lost symptoms for unknowable reasons. They attribute it to maybe I got off gluten at the exact same time, or I started taking this tincture, but just a lot of this technology has been dropping off the grid.
Right.
So that technology stops affecting them. That's the good news. The other good news is that we've made a ton of progress with grids that are even more than that. I mean, 15, 20 different grids that we've worked on, and we're working on them weekly. We work on them with clients. That's how you find grids. Is I work with a client. That's the only way to do this work. Because again, each individual is targeted differently.
Right.
I have a group of like 15, 20 of us that's highly targeted individuals. AI is constantly, strapping us down and tormenting us. And there's other people that don't have that level of technological, challenges. So they get better quicker. They just get well quicker.
Right.
And that's fine. Really what you should know is that God is taking these AI grids down one at a time at a time.
Right.
using
He
these
has
words.
totally guided this entire process, and without sometimes dreams or visions
words
or,
from clients. Yep.
right, clients will be praying and they'll say, well, I felt like I was supposed to pray this way for you, and it will lead you in a direction that you'll
Exactly.
start researching something on the internet, and it would be exactly what you needed to find in the body.
Exactly. I had one woman, I'll just tell you an example. I had one woman who, she's been with me for a long time. She really stuck in there. There's something about this work that rang true. Definitely all new information to her. She had no necessarily grid for it. And she said she was praying one day for me and she heard the word boson. And she texted me and she says, does the word boson mean anything to you? I don't even know what that means. I heard that word during my prayer and it opened up a whole nother, I was like, this is a word from the Lord. And he would do that with another client, prophetess who probably doesn't give herself as much credit as she should, but if she's listening, she knows who she is. She would get download after download. She would be researching articles, and she would send me the article, and boom. Like for the microtrap. Remember when we found the microtrap?
Right.
The microtrap is a white paper device. You can go find microtraps online. You can find white papers about it. When we found that piece of layered technology, we quantumly released it, and it was the power source for live MFI. So anybody else that still had MFI in the body, MFI is a one-off. MFI, the pathogenic MFI, is not necessarily a gridded system. So you had to kill MFI individually with each person. It didn't collapse an entire grid until we found the microtrap. When we found that microtrap, we discovered that that was the power source of MFI. And people started showing up on my clients with dead MFI in their body or MFI gone for days and days, back to the day of when we found that microtrap.
Right.
So we started we got these words from these clients, and we would do them. We would try and pray about them and then look in the body and go, well, let's use this terminology, see if the body responds. And it's been ordered. The body, God has ordered these things in order.
Yes.
It felt chaotic to us because we're getting slammed.
But to go back to your watch analogy, if you were taking apart that watch piece by piece, you almost have to take apart one and diagram where it went in the watch. And then you take apart another piece, and then you take apart another piece. And it's one piece at a time, and they have to come out in a certain order.
That's right.
Or you
mess up the whole process.
Up the whole thing.
Yeah. And you can never really learn what the watch is about. And if you just dump everything out and put it on a table, you're not going to learn what it's about.
You're not going to learn what each individual piece does.
Right.
So,
and it was it was torturous in a way for us because it was excruciating being disappointed that it wasn't the last thing, going back and getting a relapse of symptoms, seeing clients with relapse of symptoms.
Right.
It was very frustrating. And a lot of clients, not a lot, but some clients that just, it was unbearable. It was too hard for them. And, there were some clients that when they heard me on a couple of radio shows on YouTube, they kind of went, should I do that now? And God's like, yeah, maybe not now. And they didn't know why. And then they said 3 or 4 months later, they said, I think now I'm supposed to do this.
Wow.
It's because I wouldn't have been able to help them. But I had just enough information to pique their interest and validate what they were going through. But I didn't have the necessary data to help with their problem.
Right.
Most of us want to get in, walk into the doctor and get an immediate cure. We want to get help and things resolve. And for some people, it would have been too disheartening to have to be dragged through, all the 4 or 5 months of layered technology and spending time and effort and recovery. It's just too hard. So for some clients, they just all of a sudden got a download. I'm supposed to do this now. And they would drop in, and it's exactly, I wouldn't have been able to help them 6 months prior.
Right. That's great.
Yeah.
And I guess I want to give a shout out to all the clients.
Yeah.
Because you couldn't have done this work without them.
It's no way.
I couldn't have helped you without them.
That's right.
And God has totally led us every step of the way. And there were times when you were just swamped, and God would send me a download.
Yep.
Or he'd send someone else in the university a download, or he would send a client a download, and we would hear, this is what we're looking for next. And so it took an army of people.
It did.
To get this work done.
I tell you,
thank you.
Yes, thank you. Those clients that stayed faithful, that just believed God for what he was saying. Look, this work is not necessarily for everybody. I get that. And you shouldn't really use this work as your sole, system. You can go to chiropractors, you can go to acupuncturists, you go to nutritionists, use what you got out there, but still they stayed here with us, realizing I'm needed.
There's something here.
There's something going on because they could feel it. They could feel it in their bodies. Things were changing. And we would have never been able to do this without clients. So thank you, everyone that has stayed faithful. I'm honored that you would trust me to work on you and to work these systems and processes out.
I'll say one more time to those that are feeling a little bit afraid or alarmed about the things that we talked about today, you don't need to be afraid.
Yeah.
We don't want to cultivate a spirit of fear. Right. That's from the enemy. That's not from God. And God has totally had this in control the entire time.
And I've seen that with clients that do the sort of like the back and forth with the symptom groups as they would relapse when AI technology came online. God would really meet them and provide for them. And God would give those clients words of, okay, this is happening, and this is happening. And, as part of my job, I had to be willing to hear clients are not getting better. Certain groups of clients are not getting better, or they relapsed, or hear the bad news of whatever you did didn't work. And then we had to sit down and go, okay, why didn't it work? And we would go back to reinventing, another quantum wheel, trying to figure out how to get all this stuff out of the body. But once you understand that it's layered technology,
right,
then everything else makes sense.
Yes.
It explains why the relapses were happening. And that's the piece that was the hardest. I don't know if it was the hardest sell to clients, but because I'm trying to truncate all this information into a half an hour appointment, it's layered technology, it's what layered technology, and I got to do my little 5-minute elevator speech on what layered technology is, which is why we're doing this.
Right.
This is
why
we're
really an hour into the
11
broadcast.
It's a really long broadcast. We know this is really long, but we decided we just need to get all this out because we don't want to.
We said at the beginning before we hit record, however long this takes, we need to get
this all out.
Information out there.
Because layered technology is what maintains the sickness algorithms. It maintains the AI-driven software and goal-oriented data, processes that maintain those symptoms. We're just grateful that God gave us that terminology to be able to explain what's going on.
Right.
It was really the most difficult thing for me to accept. I'll say that, I really hoped it was one thing, but it wasn't.
Yeah. Well, thank you for hanging in there.
Well, thank you guys, for for pushing me along. I'll never forget, Jess told me, she's like, well, you got to keep looking because we're depending on you. I was having a week where I was feeling really good and feeling better. I'm like, I don't know what's wrong with y'all. I'm feeling just fine this week. I'm feeling better. And she's like, well, you better not quit looking just because you feel better. And that's one thing that God has made clear in my personal walk is I was never going to be free from pain until I found everything because I would stop looking. If I got free, what's my motivation to continue doing this work on the level of intensity that, that I would have is getting myself free. It's been sort of selfish in a lot of ways, but I wouldn't have pushed so hard to find everything, and I wouldn't have worked so hard to find stuff if I was free, if I was well, perfectly well. So it's one of those things that clients had to realize is that I've not arrived either, but we are seeing profound changes.
Yes,
and
that's true.
It's very awesome. I hope that this has not discouraged you at all. And I hope it's encouraged you because God has made a way where there is no way. He's showed, the group of us how to work together, work in synchronicity, to hear his voice, to hear his downloads, to implement them and move forward in this work and get rid of this layered technology, which is the bane of our existence.
It was not part of his design.
That's right. We were never supposed to be internally programmed by AI and these devices.
No.
So we hope that explains layered technology.
Yeah.
We hope that explains what quantum entanglement is and how the grid system works in a way. So later on, when we talk about grids, understand we're talking about quantum devices being quantumly released, removed from the body, and that whole algorithmic infrastructure collapses so that AI no longer has access to that aspect of the body. And that's really important because then symptoms disappear when those grids go down. It's really important.
Yeah.
So it's good. It's a good thing. Yeah, we want that. We want as few grids as possible. So let's just let me say this last thing because I know we're still running a little long here. Our goal is to find all those grids.
That's right.
And here's what God has promised. He's promised me that he's going to heal all of me, that we're going to find all the grids. And maybe today, I'd like to say we found them all, Maybe we have. I don't know.
I hope so.
I hope so. Jess hasn't yet gone, I think there's something left. Her questions are now moving to, do you think there's anything left? So we'll see how that...
There's still some healing things going on in my body. So we'll give it a
too.
few days and
see.
And then we'll say, no, there's something else.
Right. And that's fine. That's where we are. But God has promised an end. He has promised an end for me for the gridded technology. technology.
Yeah.
And let me just, one more thing. We're not getting new gridded technology.
No.
We're not like ingesting things, or things are being, unless, like, for example, you get a vaccine that has human DNA in it, which is another broadcast, but we're not getting new technology. That's not happening. Like in the last 6 months, we've not gotten something new. We're discovering what's already been in the body and removing that.
Right.
So that's really important to know, so that we can speak to that aspect, so that you're not afraid, like, tomorrow I'm going to get a boson that changes my algorithms.
No.
That's not happening. We're not getting that new technology.
Right.
We're working with grids that are already in existence, that their weakness is that they're layered and dependent on one another. So when you remove stuff, other grids begin to weaken, and we begin to see them, and we begin to remove those as well. That's a good thing. Their strength of quantum entanglement is also the weakness. When you quantumly release one thing,
They all go.
They all collapse, because when you wiggle one, you wiggle all of them. So you
Right.
quantumly wiggle and quantumly release from. That's why you only need one person on the grid to actually affect the grid.
Right.
Because if it's just me, I'm quantumly releasing this stuff all the time. You can't create a new grid if you've got quantum release, if people are quantumly releasing stuff.
Right.
Because it just goes, it disappears. Nothing can function like that. So.
Right.
That's fun. That's the cool part.
That is cool.
It's this invisible little warfare that's being programmed in people all across the U.S. and the world. So,
Hey, I want to say one more time, this has been fun to have a 3-part series. And for those of you who have been waiting for 3 weeks and sending Natalie emails and texts, hey, when are we going to get that 3rd installment?
Right.
Thanks for hanging in there.
Yeah.
These past 3 weeks have been really challenging.
They
And
have.
so be patient with us as we try to put broadcasts out there, that it might take some time. But you have one coming up that's almost done.
Yeah, I'm working on it still. It's about human DNA, how human DNA has been injected into our bodies, foreign human DNA, and how they've attached, again, layered technology to that human genetic material to create another installation in our body of another operating system to create havoc in the body.
Right.
So I'm almost done with that one. I have a little bit more editing and work to do on it, but
So
it'll
stay
be up.
tuned for that one.
That's right. Yeah.
And this will be out there, and we'll hope to talk to y'all soon.
Yeah. If you guys are interested in this work, God's been talking to you about it, that's great. We're hoping that happens. You can check out our website, quantumcommand.net. You can schedule book a session if you'd like to. You can also schedule a consult if you just want to have a little conversation. You're just paying for my time. Otherwise, I'd have 100 consultations in a week, and I wouldn't be able to, eat. We like eating around here and putting gas in our car. So just feel free to do that. You can schedule something. You can give me a little bit of ask questions. You can talk to me directly. I will say I am in an incredibly busy, crazy season right now. I'm again in like when I first started working with Dan Duvall and got some stuff on his YouTube channel. I'm yet again at that apex of what I can handle. So I'm starting to have to farm email activity to, Jess, for her to answer emails, and even some of my texts I can't even get to. So please be patient with me. I'm trying very hard to get to everybody.
And I also have about 3 jobs.
Yes.
So if I don't get to your emails right away, I really apologize. And
We're spinning
sometimes
plates here.
I don't answer them because I don't know how to answer them yet.
Yeah. So she has to get with me,
Right.
which requires a phone conversation or something.
And it's hard for me to get a conversation with Natalie these days.
right.
So hang in there. We
Please be
will get to
patient.
you.
Yeah, we appreciate your prayers. We appreciate you guys being dedicated to the work. We love ideas of broadcasts. So if you have ideas on broadcast things that you'd like to hear about, email us, and we may not respond back.
Post them in the comments.
Yeah, that's a good idea. We'd love to see that.
That would be
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, we'll look through them. I can't, again, respond to a lot of the comments, but at least I can see them and go, all right, well, let's do something about that. Because it's all in our heads. This work is all in our heads. We know how it works, but other people have a ton of questions, and we need to be able to answer those.
Right.
So, all right, well, we're going to close up today.
Yeah.
And we just appreciate you hanging in there. This was a really long broadcast, but
But we appreciate you, the listeners, and
Yeah.
clients.
yep.
Thank
we
you
love
so
you all,
much.
guys. Yeah. All right, well, you guys have a good day, and we'll see you on the next broadcast.
Bye.
Bye-bye.